Alright, Guru Nation, so I told you guys to send me your questions. You guys aren't playing around. You're sending me interview vignettes that you're getting from potential employers. So look, this is from somebody obviously anonymous, 949-415-6256. But I actually thought it would be, not only would it help this person, because I'm not going to write out the answers for them. I'm going to make them think critically a bit. But there's 3 vignettes, so there's actually 4. But the last one, I'll just briefly, it'll be like a 1-sentence response. So, vignette number 1. You are the study coordinator for a randomized double-blind study comparing an investigational drug to a placebo. The patient started the investigational drug and after 2 weeks calls you to tell you that he is experiencing gastrointestinal bleeding and that he thinks it is related to the study medication. What do you tell the patient and what do you do next? So what you should tell the patient is, it sounds like an emergency. You might want to go to the ER. That's number 1, because GI bleeding is serious stuff. Number 2, you want to inform your PI right away. Number 3, you want to tell your patient to maybe stop taking the IP and go to the ER. So if the patient then says, well, it's not an emergency, then what you want to do is schedule an unscheduled visit, like as soon as you can, maybe the next day, if they're telling you it's not an emergency. But if it is an emergency, you want to keep pushing for that. Is this an emergency? You need to go to the nearest emergency room and get this checked out. Otherwise, come in for an unscheduled visit the next day, the same day or the next day if possible. And that's going to determine what happens with the study drug. That's clearly a SAE if the patient ends up getting hospitalized. Otherwise, it's just the AE if they don't get hospitalized or it's not life-threatening in any way. So research those aspects and think a little bit critically about this vignette. Vignette number 2, you take on a new job as a study coordinator for an ongoing study. You recognize the CONMEDs have not been consistently tracked from visit to visit. Is this important? What do you do? This is very important. You need to track these things. You need to figure out, you're like a detective at this point. You need to find out what CONMEDs, all CONMEDs that have been taken for all patients in the study. You need to make sure they're in the source. If they're not, you need to put them in there. So you need to confirm and cross-reference against the medical records that the patient has, and you need to make sure they're in the source and they're in the EDC, not just for your patients, but for all the past patients as well. That's very important study data, extremely important. Number 3, John Smith is enrolled in an industry-sponsored FDA-regulated trial. He underwent a prostate ablation procedure using an investigational device. The patient was discharged and no adverse events were reported prior to discharge. The patient had a 1-week phone follow-up. Everything was going well and no complaints have been reported. You are the study coordinator, and while you were trying to schedule the patient's 1-month follow-up visit, you found out that the patient called the clinic to report hematuria, scrotal edema, and prostate pain. What steps do you take? So these are AEs or SAEs. You need to find out. You need to get more information from the patient. Did they end up going to the hospital? The vignette actually continues. The following day, the patient's wife calls you and informs you that her husband had a syncope and was hospitalized overnight. She seems very confused and wants to understand why this happened. Is this related to the device, the procedure? Is this expected? Could this happen after 3 weeks from the procedure? What should she do? What do you tell the patient's wife? And what do you do? So you tell the patient's wife that this is the purpose of clinical trials. We don't know if it's related. We need to get medical records. Our PI and the medical monitor are going to be looking at this. This is what's considered a serious adverse event, and we're going to do everything we can to document properly and try to figure out if this was related to the device and if this was expected. So there's a difference. You might want to educate her on suspected, unexpected, serious adverse reactions. So if this is a list of the expected reactions, it would be in the informed consent. If it's not in the informed consent or the investigator's brochure, then it's unexpected, and this would be called what's called a SUSAR, and we need the data from the hospital so that we can process this and add the data to the study. As far as what's going to happen with the patient should get the treatment needed at the hospital and then get regular standard of care from his doctor. In many cases, like in my site right here that I'm sitting outside of right now, my PI is the primary care physician for most of the patients that I see. So in my case, if this happened, I would tell the patients, continue your standard of treatment with your PI. As a coordinator, you need to make sure that you're coordinating all these things, these communications between the PI, the patient's family, and the medical monitor. Finally, Vignette 4, what is your opinion about requiring job applications? What is your opinion about requiring job applicants to complete a writing exercise? I think it's very important. I think for study coordinators, written skills, first of all, for everybody, writing skills is dying a slow death thanks to social media. I love memes as much as the next person. I love slang as much as the next person. But social media is killing us. I'm sounding like an old person. Social media is destroying our writing skills. And what people do, people don't even read anymore. So their only reading is other people's social media posts, full of typos, grammatical errors, etc. If you're in a medical setting, and the FDA is looking at this, and we're relying on this data to make assessments of whether the drug is safe and effective for future users of the drug, you need to have clear communication, written communications in your source documents so that the regulators know and have no doubt what the person's trying to say. I see typos all the time from medical assistants and even providers in the notes, and from coordinators too. Writing is a very important skill set, not just from the data side, but also from just communicating amongst monitors, CRC to CRA, communicating what's happening, or to a medical monitor, but of course and especially on the source, which is Alcoa-C, attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete. Good writing skills would be the last A in Alcoa-C, accurate. Hopefully this helps. I know it's not exactly what you wanted, but I want you to dig deeper and learn for yourself. But I gave you the pointers. Hopefully it's helpful. Thank you, Guru Nation. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye-bye.